White House calls Democrats obstructionist losers as federal agencies head into the first closure for 5 years. A pro-Dreamer placard at a rally in Washington on Friday night. Photograph, Rex. Shutterstock The United States has its first government shutdown in nearly 5 years after senators failed to reach a deal to keep the lights on. An effort by Republicans to keep the government open for 1 month was rejected in a vote on Friday night after they failed to address Democratic concerns about young undocumented immigrants known as Dreamers. Republicans needed 60 votes to advance the bill, but the legislation only received the support of 50 senators. 5 red state Democrats broke ranks to support the bill while 4 Republicans voted against. Quick guide: when the U.S. Congress fails to pass appropriate funding for government operations and agencies, a shutdown is triggered. Most government services are frozen, barring those that are deemed essential, such as the work of the Department of Homeland Security and FBI. During a shutdown, nearly 40% of the government workforce is placed on unpaid furlough and told not to work. Many, but not all, are non-defense federal employees. Active duty military personnel are not furloughed. Members of Congress are at an impasse over what should be included in a spending bill to keep the government open. Democrats have insisted any compromise must also include protections for the nearly 700,000 young, undocumented immigrants, known as Dreamers, who were brought to the U.S. as children. The Dreamers, who were granted temporary legal status under Barack Obama, were newly exposed to the threat of deportation when Donald Trump moved to rescind their protections in September. Trump and Republicans have argued immigration is a separate issue and can be dealt with at a later time. There have been 12 government shutdowns in the U.S. since 1981, although ranging in duration. The longest occurred under Bill Clinton, lasting a total of 21 days from December 1995 to January 1996, when the then House Speaker, Newt Gingrich, demanded sharp cuts to government programs such as Medicare, Medicaid and welfare. The most recent shutdown transpired under Obama in 2013, pitting the president against the Republican-led House of Representatives. Republicans refused to support a spending bill that included funding for Obama's healthcare law, resulting in a 16-day shutdown that at its peak affected 850,000 federal employees. A government shutdown would cost the U.S. roughly $6.5 billion a week, according to a report by S. A disruption in government spending means no government paychecks to spend, lost business and revenue to private contractors, lost sales at retail shops, particularly those that circle now closed national parks, and less tax revenue for Uncle Sam, the report stated. That means less economic activity and fewer jobs. Nearly 1 million people would not receive regular paychecks in the event of a shutdown. In previous shutdowns, furloughed employees have been paid retrospectively, but those payments have often been delayed. Sabrina Siddiqui: thank you for your feedback. But 12 a.m. Eastern Time came and went without a deal, causing funding for the federal government to lapse. Federal law requires agencies to shut down if Congress has not appropriated money to fund them. Hundreds of thousands of non-essential federal employees will be put on temporary unpaid leave. In previous shutdowns, services deemed essential, such as the work of the Homeland Security and the FBI, have continued. Speaking on the floor after the vote, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell assailed the shutdown as the result of a cynical decision by the Democrats. His opposite number, Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, delivered a scathing rebuke of Donald Trump, blaming the president for the shutdown. The New York Democrat said Trump walked away from 2 bipartisan deals, and that a Trump shutdown will serve as a perfect encapsulation for the chaos he has unleashed. A White House statement issued just before midnight said, "This is the behavior of obstructionist losers, not legislators." Democrats earlier blamed Republican divisions for the failure of the vote. Senator Ron Wyden, a Democrat from Oregon, said lawmakers from his rival party were not on the same page as President Donald Trump. "You've got the 3 branches of government, everything," Wyden said. "Can these folks organize a 2-car parade?" On Thursday, the House had voted by a margin of 230 to 197 to advance the bill after Speaker Paul Ryan made concessions to conservative Republicans in the Freedom Caucus. These included a vote on increased military funding, a potential vote on a hardline immigration bill and other subplots, which Mark Meadows, the head of the Freedom Caucus, declined to share with reporters. The vote was almost entirely along party lines, with only 6 Democrats and 11 Republicans breaking ranks. The bill did not contain any provisions to protect Dreamers, which has been a key Democratic priority since Donald Trump announced in September that he was rescinding an Obama-era program, known as DACA. The program enabled young, undocumented immigrants brought to the U.S. as children to obtain temporary legal status. After the bill passed the House, Ryan preemptively tried to blame Democrats for any government shutdown, telling reporters, "The only people standing in the way of keeping the government open are Senate Democrats." The Ohio clock strikes midnight in the Senate, marking the beginning of the federal shutdown. Photograph, Sean Thew, EPA. In a final dash to avert a shutdown, Trump canceled plans to depart for his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida, where the president was due to celebrate the anniversary of his first year in office. Instead, Trump spent the day negotiating with congressional leaders. But despite hosting Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer in the Oval Office on Friday afternoon, the sides were unable to reach an agreement. Trump and Schumer, who both hail from New York, negotiated over cheeseburgers in a small dining room adjacent to the Oval Office. A source briefed on the meeting said Schumer offered not only to meet Trump's funding request for a border wall, but also agreed to boosting defense spending, far above what the White House had requested. In exchange, Schumer requested a short-term measure that would keep the government open for just a few days, in the hopes of keeping pressure on lawmakers to reach a broader compromise. The president even seemed amenable to Schumer's approach, the source said, and told the Democratic leader he would broach the topic with Republican leaders. But not long after Schumer returned to the Capitol, he received a phone call from John Kelly, the White House Chief of Staff. Kelly, who emerged as an unexpected hardliner on immigration, informed Schumer the contours of the deal he discussed with Trump were too liberal. Democrat Senator Kamala Harris speaks during a rally in support of Dreamers in Washington. Photograph, Jose Luis Magana. As lawmakers scrambled to chart a path forward, progressive activists and Dreamers held a rally against the illuminated backdrop of the U.S. Capitol. They implored lawmakers to reject any funding measure that did not include a pathway to citizenship for the nearly 700,000 Dreamers whose protections will expire in March barring intervention from Congress. For all those Dreamers out there, our message for each and every one of you: there are those in our government that see you, that hear you, that believe and know that this country belongs to you, said Congressman Joe Kennedy III, a Democrat of Massachusetts, who repeated the message in Spanish. Funding for the government was initially due to expire in September, but lawmakers have since passed a series of stopgap measures to keep operations running in the absence of a long-term spending deal. The last short-term extension, which was passed in December, pushed the deadline to the 19th of January while leaving the fate of Dreamers in limbo. Democrats subsequently faced backlash from immigration advocates and their base for failing to hold the line on DACA after having vowed not to adjourn for the new year without a solution. Trump gave Congress until the 5th of March to replace the program. But Democrats have insisted the only way to resolve the deep partisan divide over immigration is by tying it to a must-pass bill that would simultaneously avert a shutdown and enshrine protections for Dreamers into law. Trump showed a brief willingness to compromise last week by engaging lawmakers from both parties on a potential deal to legalize Dreamers in return for beefing up border security and changes to certain visa programs. But the president dramatically undermined bipartisan talks by questioning the need to admit immigrants from places like Haiti and El Salvador, dismissing them shithole countries in a private meeting with lawmakers. Republicans meanwhile chose to move ahead with a short-term bill to fund the government, arguing that immigration was a separate issue to be dealt with at a later time. In a bid to apply pressure on Democrats, they also included in the measure a 6-year authorization of the popular Child Health Insurance Program, CHIP, which provides health care coverage to 9 million children.